I was going back to do another story, so the reporter and I went back to meet the family and give them the money. And to our surprise, we found that, you know, they had a child, a young girl. I mean, a girl who was who would be probably about 18 or 19 now, and it was a very complicated pregnancy. The child would have died, so would have the mother, and the man took the mother to the hospital. The child was delivered in a hospital, and they were able to save the child and the mother only because they had exactly 452 rupees. And that 452 rupees came directly from readers. Some were postmaster or some school teacher in in Guntur sending a money order to Rukmini Sabar, may you have a good life. You know, just taking from the article the name of the village and the district. And the money reached 452 rupees. You know, and then you realize really the power of what, as a communicator, you can do, you know. And here I was, we had come with about 25,000 rupees, and you know, but it was actually 452 rupees that came directly from readers that saved her life, you know. So that being that, of course, there's always an obverse side of it. I mean, another time when I was with Outlook, we did a story on, again in a tribal area about how the doctor, you know, and it was a story on the poorest district in India, and there was this sort of quack who used to go from village to village in the mountain, in the hills, and give injections of any kind and charge a huge amount of money. And you know, the reporter and I were thinking, you know, I took a picture of the guy, and there was a box in the story with his, you know, that this guy exploits people, etc., like that. And the end result was that he bought a copy of the magazine, and he went back with the magazine. He was the only one who could read English, and he would show his picture, and he was charging double the amount of money. So, you know, so it goes that way too. You know, but a couple of things that I realized while working on these on stories like this, you know, and I worked quite often on stories which have to do with society because that's what I'm interested in. Now, the work that I'm showing you, King Commoner Citizen, was sort of all my journalistic work put together. And there's one thing that sort of became very clear to me when I started sort of questioning the way that one photographs and the way one represents people, you know, especially in a country like ours, in a society like ours, which is so class and caste driven, etc. And you know, and it's a question of knowing your own vantage point and according respect to people. And that I think that is something that I've been learning, you know, over this period of time, because a lot of photographers ask me, you know, how do you deal with this situation of being able to photograph people, and how do you represent them? And I've sort of felt this, and I know that many of the photographers who work in the same side of in journalism and in communication sort of, you know, sort of negotiate this part is that we have to always understand that in the event of making a picture, you know, that there are always three stakeholders. There is the person you're photographing, or the milieu that you're photographing, the subject, or whatever you want to call it. There is you, or the organization you represent, if you're from a newspaper or a television channel or whatever it is, and there is the viewer. And therefore, you know, you have you have a responsibility to all three, because every person has the right to be represented the way that they want to be represented, and the viewer has the right to be able to find or be able to view what he believes to be true, or what, you know, and you should be able to represent that truly. And this I'm sort of stressing on, because it made me understand where, and in a way, where we'll be going from here. Right now, what we have is sort of in the print media, because of the sort of interest and still photography sort of works in the print media. There's a sort of, because the media itself has become more interested in sort of, quite often in very trivial matters. They're not pursuing enough of photojournalism. But we live in really exciting times, because the digital revolution has sort of opened up the doors for people to be able to show their work, and it's made photography probably the most democratic art form today. Because everyone can be a photographer, anyone can be a photographer, and be able to post that material. We have seen, like Faith talked about the social media and how social media has sort of energized, and internet has energized the world in making change. And images play a very large part in that change making process. So, and this really is to me a most exciting time to live in, because we can post images, we can see images, and there is it's no longer the exclusive domain of practitioners like, say, me, who were able to afford cameras. Now, a lot of people can afford cameras. So the next stage is what's going to happen from here? Is the question that we are asking. So, I was shooting in a year back in a brick kiln in Bihar, and here I'm a photographer, 2 cameras, and I'm in a privileged position. I'm a photographer. I work for a newspaper or whatever it is, And I was photographing this group of workers who working at the brick kiln, and I could hear this whispering amongst themselves, and sort of someone elbowing another guy and saying, "Chal chal yaar, tu bhi kar lena." So I said, what was going on? And the man had a mobile camera, and he also wanted to take pictures of me. So I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. I sort of encourage him, and it's got me thinking, and maybe it's an interesting idea to think about, that now with this mobile phone cameras, there are a lot of minuses to it, and I'll come to one of them, but this image making of our own lives, lives of people, is shifting from a sort of a privileged society to another society. We don't know anything about that. Actually speaking, till I started thinking about what I'm going to talk about here, I had not even thought about this issue. What are these? In rural India, people have got mobile phones. They're taking pictures. What are the pictures they're making? It'd be worth investigating. And if there's no platform for them to show those images, they don't have access to social media. A lot of the working class is taking pictures, like these workers in a brick kiln, and they're making images of themselves, their friends. I don't know what it is, but just imagine if there was a way for us to be able to see those images. Maybe that would reveal a really, really interesting perspective of our society, which we don't even know about. So these are the, I think, it's an idea that I'm already toying about, how to explore this part, start collecting these images and maybe put together as an exhibition, show that, and maybe we'll have a different understanding of our own society. But there is a downside to it also. All this proliferation of images, all this picture making has a certain, I was talking to one of the students last night, and his question was that it sort of averages out everything, But that's one of the issues only, and I'll touch upon that next. But the first thing, a couple of years back, I had written a small blog, and which was sort of to give some steps of what I called easy steps to becoming a great photographer. And one of the steps was, don't take photographs. Because the idea, and we all say it, I also say it, I took this picture, I take photographs, but the idea behind that is actually one of appropriation, of you taking something. Not an engagement it's a kind of a one-way engagement. And with so many people with cameras and taking pictures, I wonder where we are going to go in this thing of whose image is it. I'm shooting pictures in the street, or whatever, and so I think a certain amount of responsibility, and you're going to see a certain amount of circumspect kind of behavior on that part. But now to talk about what now. One in terms of how photography or photos are going to keep on affecting us. Now, there is no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of people know that, photographs are a primary vehicle for memory, and the way that they affect us, a lot of people used to say, and might say even now, that the moving image video will do away with photography, but it does not, because the moving image, the still photograph forces you to contemplate, and therefore it remains in your memory, and it'll continue to be a very powerful tool, a powerful medium of expression and communication. Look at the way that we remember images. In Ahmedabad itself, under a flyover, you have a mosaic mural of Gandhi sitting behind the charkha and reading. It's actually a photograph. It's a famous photograph by Margaret Book White, which is a photograph, one of the many photographs of Gandhi which are in almost all Indians' memory. Raghu Rai's picture of the Bhopal gas tragedy is something that becomes emblematic of something, the way that we remember an event, and the way that it makes us feel about that event. So what I found, for example, now is that we are sort of there was a time in photography much earlier when the actual image of something, an event, was photography sort of encapsulated the reality of that event, that something has happened. It's the evidence of that event. But now, with so much information being available, photographs do not really anymore serve the purpose of telling you that this is the truth as such, are not being able to do that. Besides, I personally have found, in my own experiences in the last many years, is that when it comes to actually say violence, when newspapers and magazines and television sort of play that image of violence over and over again, it actually has a cathartic effect on people. The actual image of violence, I believe, actually helps you forget, and it's happened so many times. Whereas if in photography we are able to move away from just that physical representation of that event and be able to look at what is happening behind it, which means that, and this is the trend now in photography, that you have people who want to, and this is how photography will be able to keep on communicating ideas and influencing the way that we think, is when it starts becoming more introspective, when it starts becoming more reflective, when it manages to disturb rather than awe you, or shock you with something, because that time is gone, you don't need it anymore. So this is where I think photography is going to go in terms of communication. You will see a lot more of people, because it's a world where people are interested in their own lives. But a lot of photographers, and this is the experience that we saw with the Delhi Photo Festival and with the work of many photographers who are great photographers, able to take their own lives or lives of individuals and relate them to larger ideas. And because they are able to relate them to larger ideas, they are able to achieve what photographers in the 70s and all were able to do, was to connect you as the viewer to a world that you don't know about. And therefore, you will find that quite often the sort of approach to a photographic story, like for example in farmer suicide in Vidarbha, the better stories that will affect you will be ones that actually speak about despair rather than just telling you that suicides happen, or about a story that affects you in terms of something could be sort of uplifts you, is about courage. So I think that's where we will go in the future, and you will find a lot of people, a lot of the photography that will come and which will actually be where you will say that this is something that I can relate to, I can understand, will actually come from very, very sort of deep introspection, come from actually self-expression. Now, before I end, I'm just going to, at the end, I'm going to show you one audio slideshow of my last work, which was called Pan India Shared Habitat, which is sort of, and in that there is, because encapsulated what I would like to work in towards in the next couple of years. But before I end, I want to say, the question, one of the questions asked me was, what does photography do for me? And as a photographer who principally has worked in communication, I think of myself as being, if I'd led a normal life, all my experiences of this life would have been about this much. I could have, I was born, I would have gone to school, I would have loved so much, I would have laughed so much, I would have had so much of great moments and so many bad moments, etc., etc., etc. But being a photojournalist and being a photographer, having witnessed and experienced the lives of so many people, actually today my life is actually this big, and that is something that photography has given me, and I don't think, and I'd exchange it for anything else. That's where I'd end, and I'll just leave you with this.